kids who destroyed their own families. The sentencing you won't forget. The night the silence broke. It was a quiet evening in the small town of Cedar Falls, Iowa. The streets were empty, the air was heavy, and in the distance, the faint sound of sirens shattered the silence. Inside a modest two-story house on Oakwood Court, police officers pushed through a door left slightly ajar. What they found would haunt the town forever. The house smelled of smoke and something metallic. In the hallway, a framed family photo hung crooked on the wall. A smiling mother, father, and two kids posing by a lake. But inside the living room, reality was far from the picture-perfect smiles. A young boy, barely 16, sat on the floor, his hands trembling as he spoke into a phone. "They're gone. All of them are gone," he whispered. "Someone broke in. He shot my family." Detectives arriving on scene were immediately suspicious. There was no sign of forced entry, no shattered windows, no footprints in the snow. The boy, later identified as Ethan Cross, had a small wound on his arm and a calmness that unsettled everyone around him. Detective Laura Mitchell, who'd worked dozens of homicide cases, knew something was off. If there was an intruder, she thought, he sure didn't take anything. The family's father, Mark Cross, was found in his recliner, television still glowing with static in the background. The mother, Claire, was in the kitchen, and upstairs, 12-year-old Emma lay motionless near her bedroom door. The entire scene looked frozen in time, like the world had stopped just for them. Ethan claimed he was asleep when the attack happened. He said he heard gunshots, ran downstairs, saw a masked man, and was shot before blacking out. But his story didn't match the evidence. The 911 call was calm, almost rehearsed. There was no panic in his voice, no trembling, no cry. The town that once saw him as a quiet, polite honor student now saw something else, a teenager whose anger had turned fatal. But the story wasn't over yet, because when police searched Ethan's phone, they found messages that changed everything, messages that suggested he didn't act alone. One in particular sent shivers down Detective Mitchell's spine. "You said we'd both be free after tonight. Don't back out now. The pact." By the next morning, the case that had shaken Cedar Falls was far from over. The town's local news ran the headline, "Teen survives family tragedy, claims intruder responsible." But behind closed doors at the precinct, detectives knew the truth was darker. Detective Laura Mitchell stared at the phone in front of her, the one that had been taken from Ethan Cross's bedroom. Inside, a single message glowed under the harsh light. "You said we'd both be free after tonight. Don't back out now." Whoever sent that message wasn't just a bystander. They were part of it. The number was traced to Lena Whitmore, a 17-year-old classmate and Ethan's closest friend. Teachers described her as quiet and withdrawn, with top grades and few friends. But her phone history painted a different picture. Late-night texts, shared fantasies about starting over, and repeated complaints about their families not understanding them. At 10:30 a.m., detectives brought Lena in. She sat across from Mitchell, pale and trembling, her hands wrapped around a water bottle she never drank from. "I didn't hurt anyone," she said immediately. "I wasn't even there." Mitchell slid Ethan's phone across the table. "Then explain this message." Lena's lips trembled. "It wasn't what it sounds like." Mitchell leaned forward. "Then tell me what it was." Lena hesitated before whispering, "We just wanted to disappear." Detectives exchanged glances. The two had been planning to run away for months. Ethan's father had discovered the plan, a folder on his laptop labeled New Life Plan. Inside were fake job applications, bus routes, and messages from Lena detailing how they could erase their old lives. But then, 2 nights before the murders, the tone changed. A chilling text from Ethan appeared. "If they don't let me go, I'll make them." When detectives confronted him with the evidence, Ethan's calm facade began to crack. He didn't deny sending the messages, but he claimed Lena had convinced him to take control of his life. She said it was the only way they'd stop controlling me, he said. Lena, on the other hand, swore Ethan had spiraled out of control on his own, that he'd started talking about freedom in a way that frightened her. She said she tried to talk him down, but the next thing she knew, the tragedy had already unfolded. As detectives dug deeper, one detail stood out. On the night of the murders, Ethan had received a call from Lena that lasted 19 minutes, starting exactly 6 minutes before the first 911 call. When Mitchell asked her about the call, Lena's voice broke. He said it was already done. He said he had no choice. Police obtained Lena's deleted messages through forensic recovery. Among them was one that stopped everyone cold. "You promised it'd be just them. You said I wouldn't have to see it." The investigators now faced two possibilities. Either Lena had been an accomplice in planning the act, or she had been a terrified bystander watching a friend fall apart. Meanwhile, the courtroom began filling with reporters and locals desperate for answers. The image of Ethan sitting stone-faced beside his attorney became the most circulated photo in Cedar Falls history. During preliminary hearings, prosecutors described the act as a premeditated family annihilation fueled by teenage delusion. The defense called it a mental breakdown triggered by years of emotional isolation. But Detective Mitchell wasn't satisfied with either explanation. Something about the case didn't sit right. The lack of motive, the eerie precision of the timeline, the missing 15 minutes between when Ethan's phone went dark and when the first officer arrived. Then came the discovery that changed everything. During a forensic search of Ethan's laptop, technicians uncovered a deleted folder titled Proof. Inside were screenshots, private notes, and an unsent message draft addressed to Lena. It read, "If they find this, tell them it wasn't just me. Tell them what you planned. Tell them the truth." But the message had never been sent. Detective Mitchell stared at the screen, the blue light reflecting in her eyes. "He tried to expose someone," she whispered. Was Ethan trying to confess or warn them? The question hung in the air like smoke, and when they checked Lena's phone again, they discovered one final clue. A video file labeled simply, "Tonight." When the file began to play, the room fell silent. It was security footage, but not from the Cross family's home. It was recorded from Lena's, and what it showed would turn the entire investigation upside down. The video that changed everything. The moment the footage began to play, every officer in the room went silent. The timestamp read, June 15th, 11:42 p.m., 15 minutes before the 911 call. The video was grainy but clear enough to recognize faces. In the corner of the frame, under a single lamp, sat Ethan Cross and Lena Whitmore. Ethan's eyes were red and glassy, his hands trembling as he loaded something into a backpack. Lena, in contrast, looked coldly composed, too calm for what was about to unfold. "You don't have to do this," Ethan muttered. Lena's voice, low but steady, cut through the silence. "You said you wanted to be free. This is the only way you'll ever be." Detective Laura Mitchell paused the footage. The blue light of the paused frame flickered across the walls. "She was there," she said quietly. The file continued. The two argued, quietly, intensely, about what would happen after. Lena said she'd leave town, start over. Ethan said he couldn't do it alone. Then came the line that froze Mitchell's blood. Lena leaned in, whispering, "When it's over, call me. I'll make sure they believe your story." It was no longer a question of guilt. It was a question of control. For weeks, Lena had manipulated Ethan, twisting his frustrations into violence. Investigators pieced it together. The deleted messages, the staged security camera shutdown, and the call made seconds before Ethan dialed 911. Lena had orchestrated every step, but from the safety of her own home. When confronted with the footage, Lena broke. "He wasn't supposed to," she began, but her voice cracked. "It wasn't supposed to go that far." Mitchell replied. "You told him to make them believe his story. You didn't want freedom, Lena. You wanted power." In court, the atmosphere was electric. The press packed every corner. Families of both teens sat behind the railing, silent and pale. And the footage was played for the jury. No one moved. Ethan, now in a prison uniform, kept his head down. Lena refused to look at the screen. The prosecutor's words echoed through the courtroom. She didn't pull the trigger, but she lit the match. The defense argued Lena was emotionally manipulated by Ethan, that she was scared, that she only played along to protect herself. But the evidence told another story. Her search history included phrases like, "how to fake a home invasion," and "how long does gunshot residue stay on skin?" When the verdict was read, the room was dead still. Lena Whitmore, for your role in the deaths of Mark, Claire, and Emma Cross, this court finds you guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and accessory to homicide. Lena didn't cry. She didn't plead. She simply looked at Ethan, whose face remained blank, as if the two had silently agreed this would be their ending. The judge's voice cut through the silence. "You are sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole." The gavel struck once, sharp and final, but even that wasn't the end. Weeks later, Detective Mitchell received a package at her desk. No return address, just a plain envelope. Inside was a single USB drive and a handwritten note that read, "You think you know everything, but you missed something." The drive contained a single video clip, the same one from Lena's computer, but this version had an extra 30 seconds at the end. Ethan looked directly into the camera. His eyes were hollow, his voice barely above a whisper. "She said they'd never believe me, that they'd only see the bad in me. So this is for her, and for them. Maybe now you'll understand." He reached for the camera, and the screen went black. Detective Mitchell leaned back in her chair, staring at the monitor's reflection. The words lingered in her mind like smoke. "Maybe now you'll understand." Was Ethan confessing to everything, or warning them that Lena's manipulation went even deeper than anyone thought? The case was officially closed, but something about it refused to die. People across the country watched the courtroom footage, dissected every frame, every glance, every flicker of guilt between Ethan and Lena. In the end, both of them got what they said they wanted, to be free. Just not in the way they imagined. And as Detective Mitchell walked out of the precinct that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't over. Somewhere in another small town, someone was reading about the Cross case and taking notes. Because evil doesn't vanish when the sentence is read. It just finds someone new to listen. If you thought this story was haunting, the screen fades to black. You're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it.